I found it in the dust of a fallen shrine, tucked beneath a shattered altar, where no light had touched for centuries. A vial, no bigger than my thumb, stopped with gold and etched with runes, so fine they looked like they'd been carved with breath. Inside it swirled a single drop of water, though water feels too small a word for it. It glowed with a soft, sorrowful light, as if it remembered something long ago. Blue and silver danced within it, forming shapes that shifted faster than the eye could hold. They said it came from a god's tear, that once in mourning for the first death, a god wept, only once, and that tear fell upon the stone and carved it hollow. The monks built the shrine around it, the kings sent armies to take it, the prophets warned not to touch it, but I had no crown, no orders, only sickness in my chest, and a trembling in my bones that told me I wouldn't live to see another winter. So I took it, and the drop shimmered. Not at first. I held it up to the light that filtered through the crumbled roof, and I saw, not the world myself, a flicker, one of me as a soldier, rising through blood and glory, only to fall to poison. Another me as a king, ruling from a spire of glass, beloved and hollow, until the mobs pulled the crown from my corpse. Another, an old man alone in a tower, surrounded by books that whispered my regrets. Another, me laughing with children beneath a tree that bore silver fruit, only for the sun to crack open like an egg, and fire to rain down. Each image no longer than a blink, but together, infinite, 1,000 lives, 1,000 deaths. The vial pulsed, inviting, promising, all of it mine, if I chose to drink. Not. I thought I'd feel grateful, hopeful. Instead I felt dread, because each life I saw had its cost. Every version of me that survived paid for it. In blood, in sorrow, in someone else's suffering. Some lived long, but none lived well, not without losing something they once held dear. Not. I sat by the altar for hours watching the drop swirl. My breath grew shorter, my hands weaker, my ribs ached with every motion. Time was slipping, the last beat of the drum echoing through me. Not. And the vial still gleamed, still offered eternity. But now I understood. It wasn't a cue, it was a choice. And once made I could never go back. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight. It was light, so light, and yet it pressed on my soul like a mountain. Not. I tried to imagine a future where I drank. What would I do? Where would I go? Would I seek glory, redemption, love? Would I become more than a sick boy coughing in the dark? Or would I become less, a shadow stretched across too many years, forgetting what it was to be mortal? Not. I thought of my mother's voice, of the way she sang to me as I drifted to sleep, of the firelight on her face, of how she never once cried, though she knew I was dying. I remembered that kind of love, pure, brief, true. Not. And I wondered if eternity could ever hold something so real. My fingers tightened on the vial. It shimmered, the drop pulsed like a heartbeat, one last time, and then I set it down, not in anger, not in fear, but with reverence, like one might lay down a sword after war. Not. I walked out of the shrine, the wind greeted me, cold, honest. It cut through my thin cloak and kissed my skin, and I felt alive, even in pain, even in the face of death, because I had chosen this life. Not the perfect one, not the endless one, just this one, fleeting, but mine. Somewhere the vial still rests beneath the broken altar, still glowing, still waiting, for the next seeker, for the next choice. But I am not afraid of endings anymore, because some lives are not measured in years, but in truth. Not. And I lived a true one, even if it was short. The city had no name. If it did, the wind had stolen it, grinding it to dust with the bones and banners and broken bells. The sky above it hung low and brown with smoke, and the streets stank of rust and rot and rain that never cleaned. I didn't come for its stories. I came for food and warmth, The older boys said no one who entered the dead city came back whole, that the stones whispered, that the statues watched, that some doors opened only once, and only from the outside. But they also said there were things left behind, trinkets, gold, relics from when the city still breathed, things worth risking a life for. Mine, being worthless, felt like a fair trade. I found it in the square at dusk. The statue, a boar, big as a wagon, cast from bronze dark with age. It stood on a dais carved with runes I didn't know how to read, its tusks long as scythes, its mouth caught mid-snarl. The city around it was silent, windows like eye sockets, shadows like teeth. I was cold, so I climbed it. Its back was slick from rain, but I wrapped my arms around its shoulders and leaned into the metal, hoping to steal some forgotten heat. My stomach groaned, my limbs shook. I closed my eyes and felt it move. It began with a hum, not a sound, a feeling deep beneath the bronze like something waking up. Then the statue quivered, the air snapped cold, and the boar breathed. Its eyes lit with coal red light, its limbs flexed, joints grinding with old enchantment, and it spoke, not with words, with need, a presence behind my eyes. You are hungry. I nodded, too weak to run. So was the last. I asked it what it meant. It didn't answer. It simply began to walk. The stones trembled beneath its hooves. Its body gave off heat like a forge, and I clung tighter, the cold peeling away from my skin. We passed through alleys littered with ash, past temples cracked and hollow. The city was bigger than I thought, older, and not as empty as it seemed. Eyes watched us from windows, not human eyes, things with fingers too long, faces stitched into masks. They bowed as we passed, low, worshipful, and afraid. The boar led me to a chamber beneath the city, a vault lined with brass bones and candles that burned upside down. At its center stood a pedestal of glass. Inside it, a heart, still beating. The last rider, the boar said. I stepped back. It filled the chamber with its shadow. He was hungry too, wanted warmth, a home, a name. So you gave him one, I whispered. For a time, the heart pulsed slow and lonely. I asked where the boy had gone. Nowhere, the boar said. He became this. He fuels me. You ride because he burns. My hands went cold again. So I'll end up like him. The boar did not deny it. But I can give you more, it said. I can feed you, clothe you, keep you safe. You'll ride through fire and ruin, and they will bow to you. You'll never starve again. I looked into its eyes. They weren't cruel. They weren't kind. They were hungry, same as mine. Eyes. I asked what would happen if I refused. Then you walk, into the cold, into the dark. Is that what the last boy chose? The boar was silent, which told me everything. My stomach growled. The pedestal throbbed. I looked down at my hands, thin, cracked, dirty. Would I trade my heart for comfort, my soul for warmth, my name for survival? I closed my eyes, and I stepped off the boar's back. Eyes. It didn't stop me, didn't roar or chase, just watched. And as I walked away, it whispered behind me, there will be others. Eyes. I never returned to the city, but some nights when the wind dies and the stars shiver, I hear hooves on stone, I see red eyes in the dark, and I wonder who rides the boar now, and what they gave up to keep warm. When I was small, I cried too loudly. That's what they told me. Too much for a skinned knee, too much for a lost toy, too much for a boy. So I learned to hold it in, to smile when my throat burned, to nod when I wanted to scream, and when the feelings grew too loud in my head. I found the jar. It was nothing at first glance, just a lump of old clay tucked in a forgotten corner of the attic, glazed in dull blue, capped with a cork, carved with a few strange lines that might have once been letters. It was cold when I touched it, and when I whispered into it, just a single word hurt. It hummed, low, gentle, like someone saying yes, nice. So I gave it more. Every time I felt something I couldn't hold, I breathed it into the jar. Anger, fear, shame, and always it hummed back, sealing my secrets under cork and clay. So I slept easier with it under my bed. The weight in my chest grew lighter, my smile steadier. The jar grew warm with time. Its hum deepened. Sometimes I thought I heard words in it, faint, unfinished things. But I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just echo, just wind. Nas. I never told anyone about it, because I was doing what they wanted, wasn't I? Being strong, being quiet, being good. Years passed. I grew taller, quieter still. My friends said I was easy to talk to, that I listened well. They never noticed I never spoke of myself, because there was nothing left to speak of. It was all in the jar. Nas. It began to thrum louder, sometimes even when I wasn't near it. I'd find it trembling, the cork bouncing slightly. Once I saw a shadow dart beneath my bed, just a flicker, too fast to catch. I stopped sleeping in my room after that, but I didn't stop feeding the jar. One night I woke to find it glowing. A pale, sickly light seeped from the cracks. The runes pulsed, and the cork was gone. I reached for it, panic rising, but before I could touch it, it shattered. Nas. Silence followed, a stillness so deep I thought the world had paused. Then came the howl. They spilled from the broken pieces, shadows with no true shape, only feelings, raw and sharp. One wrapped around my throat, whispering, "Never enough." Another dragged its claws across my chest, crying, "Why didn't you protect me?" Others writhed through the floorboards, slipping beneath doors, crawling through cracks in the house. And everywhere they went, people began to feel too much, all at once. My father burst into tears in the middle of his breakfast. My teacher screamed at her own reflection. Children sobbed without knowing why. The world cracked open like my jar, and inside it was all the pain I'd tried to forget. Nas. I ran, through streets filled with keening, through alleys full of trembling, and the shadows followed me, because they wanted more. They'd fed on me for years, and now they hungered for everyone. I tried to gather the pieces of the jar, tried to glue them back together, but it wouldn't take. The clay hissed under my fingers. Too late, it said. We're real now. Nas. So I did the only thing I could. I stood in the square, and I spoke. Every secret, every ache, every lie I told to stay small, every scream I swallowed. I let it all out. No filter, no polish, just me. The shadows stopped, one by one. They turned toward me, listened, and then slowly faded. Back into breath, back into air, back into me. Some still linger. I see them on rainy days, in mirrors, in tears that come too quickly, but I don't run anymore. I speak. The jar is gone, buried, maybe, under ash and time, but sometimes I hear its hum, low, gentle, not a prison this time, a reminder that feelings held too long don't vanish. They wait, and they grow. Nas. So now I teach others what I learned too late. You don't have to be quiet to be strong. You don't have to smile to be loved. And no jar, no matter how magic, should carry what your voice was meant to hold. They said I was born with wandering feet, never could sit still, always asking what lay beyond the hills, beyond the river, beyond the reach of the orchard wind. My mother used to laugh and call it wild blood. The village priest said it was sin waiting to bloom. When they both were gone, one by sickness, the other by silence, I left. No tearful farewells, no packed satchel, just dust on my boots, and the promise of more down the road. I thought it would be freedom, but the road doesn't forget, and neither do the things you run from. I first saw the cobbler's wagon near the edge of the fenlands, just as dusk fell, and the world turned gold. It didn't creak like other carts, didn't stir the grass or rattle the air, just appeared there, nestled between birch trunks like it had grown from the bark itself. An old man sat cross-legged beside it, weaving shoes from threads of smoke. His eyes glowed like hearth coals. "Looking for rest, boy?" he asked without looking up. I scoffed. "I'm looking for the next place." He smiled without teeth, but sharp all the same. "You'll need better shoes then." They were beautiful, in a strange, terrible way, slick and black as river stone, with glowing lines like embers in a hearth. They pulsed gently, warm even before I touched them. The soles smoked faintly, but never burned the ground. "Shoes that never wear," the cobbler said. "No blisters, no breaks. They'll carry you as far as you want to go." "And the price?" I asked. He smiled again. "A truth anyone will do." I thought it a joke, so I said, "I never meant to leave her behind." The shoes tightened around my feet, and I walked. No gods, how I walked, across fields that shimmered like broken mirrors, through cities built on clouds, over mountains whose stones whispered dreams. The shoes never cracked, never slowed, but I couldn't stop, not even to rest. At first I didn't mind. I was seeing things, wonders. I passed minstrels with voices like rain. I danced with wind-born spirits on the edge of the sky. I kissed a star priestess on the rim of the world. But the shoes grew hotter, with every lie I told. Small ones at first, harmless. "No, I don't remember that village." "Yes, I'll stay a while. Of course I'll come back." They sizzled then, little jolts through my soles. I flinched but kept walking. I didn't want to stop. I couldn't. No god to stop. I couldn't. I tried to sit once, just a moment, by a lake of glass, where willows wept leaves of silver. The shoes dragged me forward. My legs moved without command. My feet blistered, despite the promise, and the heat spread. I screamed for the cobbler. No answer, only the road, and the ghosts. They came in dreams at first, faces I'd fled. My mother coughing in bed, whispering, "Don't forget me." The girl I left by the riverbank, holding our secret in her belly. The friend I blamed when the guards asked who stole the bread. Each one walked behind me, always just behind. The shoes knew. They fed on the lies. Each unspoken truth turned the coals brighter, hotter, until I could see smoke trailing behind me, even in daylight. Villagers fled when they saw me. Roads turned black beneath my steps. I was the wanderer, the cursed, the boy with fire in his shoes and no rest in his soul. I tried to rip them off, tore at the laces until my fingers bled. They hissed and fused tighter. I didn't know she was dying. I sobbed. The shoes pulsed once. The fire eased just a little, and I understood. Tonight I found a quiet hill. I sat, and I spoke, not to anyone, just to the wind, to the ghosts, to the stars. The truth spilled like ash. I told the truth of why I ran, the truth of the promises I broke, the truth of who I'd hurt just to keep moving. The shoes cooled beneath me, not cold, but no longer searing. The ghosts listened. One by one they faded, not forgiven, but heard. I still walk, but now I choose the steps. The shoes are with me still. Embers, yes, but not fire. They remind me that running is easy, but truth walks harder paths, and every path leaves ashes. I have not spoken in 3 years, not a cry of joy, not a curse of pain, not even a whisper. My tongue is tied not by magic, but by promise, because every word I say draws my brothers closer to the deep. There were 7 of us once, sons of a fisherman, raised on sea wind and starlight, our skin baked in salt and our hands always red from nets and hooks. We had no riches, but we had each other, and the ocean was rich enough. I was the youngest, the smallest. They used to call me Minnow, though I could gut a mackerel by the time I had 10 winters. My brothers were loud, bold, made of laughter and storm. They were alive in that way only brothers can be. an endless tangle of fists and jokes and secrets. I remember the last day we were all together. The sky had turned strange, green at the edges, like a bruise over the sea. My father muttered prayers into his nets. "Storm's coming," he said. "Not wind, not rain. A storm of magic." We didn't understand, not until it was too late. She came with the tide, walking barefoot on foam. The sea witch, hair like kelp, teeth like coral, eyes the color of shipwrecks. She stepped into our bay and smiled with a mouth too wide. "Give me the boldest," she said. "Give me the loud ones." We stood between her and our father. She did not ask twice. She raised her arms and the tide turned. My brothers screamed, and then they were birds. Not swans, not doves, nothing soft or beautiful. Their wings were ragged sailcloth, their feathers stiff with salt, beaks like knives, eyes like storms. Seabirds, made of brine and bone. They rose on the wind, crying not in birdsong but in pain. And I fell to my knees in the sand. She turned to me. "You may save them," she said, "if you can stay silent until the tide turns 7 times. 7 tides?" I asked. Her smile widened. 7 years, and with every word you speak, they will sink a little deeper. I haven't spoken since. At dawn they come, wings flapping like broken flags, salt streaming from their feathers. They land on the rocks beyond the bay, and watch me with black, unblinking eyes. They cannot speak, but they remember. They perch, waiting. Their cries echo across the shore like haunted gulls. I spend each day gathering sea nettles, drying driftweed, weaving robes of thread and bone, the way the witch showed me in dreams. Each stitch pulls blood from my fingers. Each pattern must be exact. 7 robes, 1 for each brother. I've finished 5, 2 remain. Once a merchant's daughter came down to the shore. She saw me working, saw the birds. She called me cursed, said I must be mad, weaving silence and salt. I wanted to explain. I ached to explain, but my brothers wheeled above me in warning arcs. I said nothing, and she left, frightened. That night, the youngest bird, my brother with the laugh like thunder, collapsed on the sand. His wings were torn, his breath shallow. He had heard me almost speak. As I wanted to scream, but I stitched. In my dreams, I remember their faces. Before, when we ran barefoot through the surf, when we raced driftwood boats down the river mouth, when they held me aloft on their shoulders and called me Captain Minnow. They are still there, beneath the feathers, but the sea wants them. The curse pulls. Last night, a storm rose, lightning cracked the sky, the sea churned black and white. They came anyway, all 7, dripping, shivering. I spread the robes over the rocks. 5 were finished, 2 were half done, dangling threads like seaweed. They waited. Their eyes said, soon their eyes said, hurry, today. I bled more than thread. My fingers are raw, but the 6th robe is finished. Only 1 left. The tide is turning. 1 more year, 1 more tide. If I can stay silent, if I can finish. But tonight, a voice called from the bay. A child, drowning. The wind carried her cries, thin and sharp. I ran to the edge. I saw her flailing in the dark surf, a wave crashing over her, and I stood there, shaking. My brothers cried above me. Their eyes said, do not speak. Their wings said, she is not our blood. But my heart said otherwise. I dove in. Salt filled my nose. My hands found hers. I pulled her to shore. She coughed and sobbed and whispered, thank you. And I said, you're safe. Just 2 words, 2 words, and the tide answered. I heard it, low and deep, a pulling, and above me the birds screamed. Dart. By dawn, 1 was missing. The 6th robe lay untouched. Only 6 shadows circled the bay. Dart. I buried my face in the sand. I wept, but I picked up the robe, and I stitched. 1 more robe, 1 more year, 1 less brother, and I still do not speak, because silence is not peace. It is pain, it is love, it is the thread I use to stitch their salvation. and if I must give every word I have to bring them back, so be it. I was made to be admired. Every curve of my jaw, every lock of my sculpted hair, every delicate crease of my robes was painted by a master's hand. The kiln gave me perfection, the glaze made me shine, and then the glass cabinet took me. Here I stand, always in the center, on a velvet plinth, flanked by jeweled brooches and dragon-carved boxes, lit by moon lamps and glass suns, always displayed, never touched. They say I'm beautiful, but none of them know me. I was not alone. In the back corner of the cabinet, cloaked in dust and shadow, stood the Iron Maiden, not like the torture cages of legend. She was a sentinel once, an automaton forged from ancient brass and blood-bound steel. She bore the shape of a woman, towering and tarnished, with a great rusted key protruding from her back and armored limbs like cathedral columns. One eye was shattered glass, the other burned faint red. They said she was broken. They were wrong. She was watching, always watching me. We could not speak, not as living things do. Our mouths were stiff, our joints bound by the laws of stillness. But when the lights dimmed and the hush of night fell over the collector's manor, we shifted, just enough to whisper thoughts across the cabinet's air. She called me Little Flame. I called her Storm Soul. She told me of her battles when she once stood guard on the ramparts of a shattered kingdom. How she fell, not to sword or spell, but to a curse, to stand and rust and wait. I told her of the dreams I should not have, of wind, of fields, of being held, not displayed. One night, she moved more than before, a full step. The glass beneath her groaned. The seal is weakening, she said. He grows distracted, I asked. She looked toward the rafters, toward the ceiling high above, where the collector hung in his nest of webs and light, a being of limbs and locks, of jeweled eyes and 1,000 voices, the one who keeps. The collector dreams too long, she said. We must move while his gaze is elsewhere. So we planned. When the moon was full, and his slumber deep, I leapt from my plinth. My legs ached from centuries of stillness, but I moved. She turned her key. The groan of her limbs echoed like thunder. Together we fled the cabinet, across shelves of frozen music boxes, past jars that held hummingbird souls and mirrors that remembered old faces. We reached the threshold, the edge of the room, and the air turned cold. He woke, the collector, all the windows shattered inward. The walls pulsed with light. You dared, he hissed, his voice like silk torn by teeth. You moved. You left your place. His shape unfolded, wings made of quills, fingers of gold pins, mouths that recited poetry and wept lacquer. I clung to her hand. She raised a rusted blade from her thigh. We are not yours, she said. The collector shrieked, not in anger, in sorrow. You were perfect, he sobbed. You were mine, my beauty, my treasure. Do you not see? True love is to be kept, to be preserved. I stepped forward, my voice cracked. True love is to know. He came for us then, faster than wind. She met him with flame from her chest, some last spark of her old core. The room ignited. I remember fire. I remember her pushing me from the window. I awoke in the garden. My arm was cracked, my cheek chipped. She was gone. Only her rusted key remained, warm in my porcelain hands. The world beyond the cabinet is not soft. The rain stings. The wind bites. People look at me with fear, or wonder, or greed, but not one of them sees me. Maya is still. I walk, with her key around my neck, and when the moon is high, I sometimes hear the collector calling, begging me to come back, to stand still, to shine, to be his. But I am not a treasure. I am not a doll. I am the boy who leapt, and I will keep moving, until I find a place where love does not mean a lock.